10. Jack couldn't speak. Our passports, said Annie, they got destroyed by the fire on the other side of the Great Bridge. The samurai narrowed his eyes. Your passports burned, he said. Then why were you even on the other side of the Great Bridge? We were with Master Basho, said Jack. Master Basho, said the samurai. Yes, said Annie, we are his students. Oh, the samurai's expression brightened. You study poetry with Master Basho? Yes, said Annie. Would you like to hear some poems? Oh no, thought Jack. Not again. Yes, please, said the samurai. No problem. Annie thought for a moment and then said, here's a simple little poem. She recited. Rain falls outside, but the tiny cricket on the hearth is dry tonight. The samurai nodded. He said, that's very simple, but very lovely. Thank you, said Annie. The man turned to Jack. Jack could hardly breathe. His mind was blank. He looked to Annie for help, but Annie just smiled, waiting to hear his poem. Jack cleared his throat. He tried to stay calm. He closed his eyes, and he let his mind roam over their visit to Japan. He opened his eyes and looked at the cloudless sky and said, the sun is shining, the day is hot, but moonlight and cool breezes still fill my heart, left over from last night. Whoa, whispered Annie, that was good. Yeah, very good, said the samurai. He looked at the sky. The moonlight, the cool breeze, he mused. Left over from the night, very good. Master Basho has taught you well. The samurai strolled away, shaking his head and murmuring to himself. He let out a happy laugh, as if he were delighted with the day. Jack couldn't believe it. They were free. Hurry, let's go, he said, before someone else sees us and wants a poem. Jack and Annie ran to the rope ladder and started up. As soon as they climbed inside the treehouse, Jack grabbed the Pennsylvania book. He found a picture of the Frog Creek woods. As the famous samurai once said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, said Jack. Or one sentence, said Annie. Right, said Jack. He pointed at the picture. I wish we could go home. Annie gasped. Wait a minute, she said. We forgot our mission. What? Said Jack. But the wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. The early morning air was cold. Jack and Annie were back in Frog Creek, wearing their own clothes. Jack's burlap bag was a backpack again. He looked inside to make sure the wand of Dianthus was still there. It was. And Basho's frog poem was there too. I can't believe it, said Annie. We didn't look for a secret of happiness for Merlin. How could we have forgotten that? What will Morgan say, said Annie. We've never forgotten a mission before. And this one was the most important we've ever had, to help save Merlin. Annie was near tears. Wait, calm down, said Jack. Let's think for a minute. Maybe we actually found a secret of happiness. Maybe we just didn't know we found it. You mean like we were extra happy at any time? Asked Annie. Yes, sort of. When were we extra happy? I don't know. Were you? Said Annie. I think a few times, said Jack. Like when? Said Annie. Well, like when we were crossing the Great Bridge with Basho, I felt happy then, said Jack. Me too, said Annie, and I was pretty happy eating sushi. Yeah, but I got scared when I saw the samurai watching me, said Jack. What about the wrestling match? Asked Annie. That was fun, said Jack, but I don't know if it made me happy. Riding the dragon and putting out the fire? Asked Annie. That was great, said Jack, but I was too worried about saving the city to be happy. Making up poems for the samurai then, said Annie. Too nervous, said Jack. Well then, when were you purely happy? Asked Annie. I think when... Jack stopped. He felt silly saying what he was about to say. Go ahead, said Annie. I think when I was lying on the mat in Basho's house, said Jack, and I touched that little patch of moonlight on the floor and I listened to the banana leaves in the wind. Oh, yeah, said Annie, before we fell asleep, and I heard the cricket, and I felt like I was a cricket myself going to sleep in a cozy place. Yeah, like that, said Jack. It's like what Basho said about finding beauty in the small things of nature, said Annie. Like his poem about that frog splashing in the water. I think that's it, said Jack. The secret of happiness is paying really close attention to the small things in nature. Wow, said Annie, I actually think that's a great secret to share with Merlin. It is, said Jack, and Basho's poem will help Merlin understand. Right, said Annie. Let's go, said Jack. Annie climbed down the rope ladder. Jack put his pack on his back and followed her. As Jack and Annie started through the chilly woods together, Jack noticed things he'd never seen before. He saw tiny wild blue wildflowers sprouting up from the winter-weary ground. He saw fresh anthills in the dirt. He saw leaf buds on trees and green moss on a rock, bright in the March sunlight. I feel like I am seeing spring for the first time, said Jack. Me too, said Annie. Not for the first time this year, said Jack, but for like the first time in my whole life. Me too, said Annie. Jack felt happy, really happy, as he and Annie headed for home in the sparkling morning light. This is a great picture. Let's get it up there on the screen. And that is the end of the story. Although it does talk a little bit about Basho. He was born in Japan in 1644, so that would be before George Washington. It says his family wanted him to be a samurai, but he wanted to write poetry instead. It says he was very poor and no one knew about him for many years, but once people started to read his poetry, he became very famous. It says a student gave him a banana tree. Basho is the name for banana tree in Japanese, which is how he got his name. A student gave him that to plant in his yard. In 1862, Basho's house was destroyed by a fire that swept through Edo, and it did burn almost the whole city. But a new house was built for Basho. He didn't live there long. He journeyed all around Japan and he wrote books about his travels. And in his books, he would write like journal writing and also poetry. This is important. The form of poetry that Basho is famous for is called the haiku. It is the shortest form of Japanese poetry. Haiku poetry is written in plain speech and describes little things in everyday life. A haiku can seem simple, but it can have a deep effect on the reader. A good haiku poem can wake you up and help you see life in a fresh way, like it did for Jack and Annie and other people in the story. Thank you for listening. The end.